Hello, Dev Game Club listeners. Brett here. Before we get to today's interview, a couple of things. First, as this is an interview, it is uncensored. And while there is not a lot of cursing, there are one or two instances. And so judge appropriately for your listening audience. Second, I want to highlight that as a new year approaches, so too does a new Defeating Games for Charity event. It is coming on January 23rd through the 25th and will include a worldwide set of 24 streamers over the course of 50 hours. We look forward to it. Now, on to our interview. Hello and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who has made it through the final challenge where we pretended we were going to murder him.
Tim Longo. Wow. Just off with a bang.
It was pretend, Tim. It was pretend.
Yeah, not to me.
Well, fair enough.
Real.
Let's not pretend is that we have another guest this evening. You want to
We
introduce?
do. Yes, and I think potentially rounding out our Portal series, which we've done.
Which is why it was also the final challenge.
Exactly. Just by sheer scheduling. We have Kim Swift on today, everybody.
Hey, nice to meet y'all.
Thank you. Yes, good to meet you, Kim. Thanks for coming on. I'll jump into the intro here real quick, but we're really excited to have you on. And again, remind me or let me know if I get anything wrong here.
Okay.
All right. So
I'm curious what the internet says.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Wikipedia mainly, but you probably know what that says. So Kim was one of the DigiPen graduates on the Narbacular Drop team who would go on to demo that game to Valve and Gabe Newell, which resulted in the team being hired into Valve around 2005, I think.
Correct, yes.
Okay, good. Then they would go on to create Portal based on that Narbacular drop. Did I say it wrong?
I mean, it's a made-up word, so I don't know how much it really matters. But,
great. We can talk about that then. I think I remember a detail about that from some.
There are other people who say Narbacular. So
there's many ways. If you can get it out. Narbacular. Drop game, which with the help of other Valve employees like Eric Wolpaw, who we recently had on the podcast as well. Both of them accepted, I believe, the Game Developer Choice Award for Portal when it did win that year. Beyond Portal, Kim also was a key developer on the Left 4 Dead series within Valve. Kim was also recognized by Fortune as one of the 30 under 30 most influential figures in video games. Super lucky to have her on. Kim would then leave Valve and join Airtight Games around 2009, where she was creative director on Quantum Conundrum. Since Airtight Games, Kim has held senior creative and director roles at studios like Amazon Games, EA's Motive Studios, as well as Google Stadia. Semi-recently, she was also the head of creative at Xbox Publishing, and now has just joined Near Studios as their COO, and also does consulting on the side, we understand. So welcome, Kim, to the podcast.
Yay! Yeah, that was pretty accurate. Go internet.
Go internet. Research-wise, we do this in our spare time. So, we do what we can, but luckily the internet's got a lot of information, but often not correct. So to jump in.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to jump in, one of the ways that we do often like to start is, and we do believe the audience likes to hear about, is kind of, we do have a lot of, budding game developers, I think. They like to hear about how people kind of got into games, even from an early age, how you kind of ended up at Digipen or what have you. So are you up for starting at the beginning and
Sure. Yeah, let's go back 20 plus years ago. Let's do it.
Go for it.
Oh, yeah. When I decided when I was in middle school, basically, that I wanted to grow up and make video games.
Yes.
I didn't know how to do that, though. So it was just one of those, like, yeah, when kids say, like, yeah, I want to go and be an astronaut, I was like, I want to make video games. And at some point in high school, I was talking to my parents about wanting to go and do this when I needed to figure out where I was going to go to college. And it was actually my dad that brought it up. He, I think, had a coworker whose son went to Digipen, and he said, hey, there's this school, Digipen, if you wanted to go learn and make games. And I was like, oh, okay. You would actually let me go there? They're like, yeah, sure. And at first I actually wanted to enroll in the art program. But at the time, they only had an associate's degree. And my parents were basically like, okay, look, we'll make a deal with you. You can go to video game school, but you need to have a 4-year degree. And, we would be much more comfortable if you went with this engineering degree.
Got it.
Which was their real-time interactive simulation degree, which is their fancy term for computer science with a specialization in computer graphics programming. So I was like, okay, cool, deal. So at the time, I had never programmed a day in my life when I decided this. So this was my senior year of high school. And so I was like, okay, well, I should probably go figure that out. So at the time, it somehow netted out that I only had like 3 classes in high school during my senior year. Like I had gotten all the credits.
Yeah.
And so I just used the extra time to go take some computer science classes at the local community college. So I did some C++ classes, and what I learned basically in 2 semesters there was surpassed in like 2-3 months at Digipen. And then I was like, oh no. So that's how I wound up at Digipen.
Yeah, my understanding is the schools that are that focused, like trade type schools, on especially in video games, go pretty fast. Like their pace is very they're intense.
Yeah, it's definitely more focused on practical application versus theory. Yeah. So like in a traditional, to my understanding, a traditional computer science degree is more about theory the first year than it is about actually like, oh, I need to program and, turn in assignments where I've actually made something. Yeah. And that's not until a little bit later in a degree. Whereas at Digipen, it's day 1, like, oh yeah, you're coding and you're going to, here's a Game Boy Advance, go program in BASIC, have fun. You're like, what?
Nice.
So
what were some of the early games, like you mentioned in middle school, you knew you wanted to make video games. What were there games that were influencing you? I mean, just,
pretty much,
I guess.
Pretty much anything that was on Super Nintendo. I also got super into point and click adventure games in the 90s too as well. Like anything by Tim Schafer.
Nice.
So I really enjoyed those games. And then in high school, I played quite a bit of EverQuest. So
me too.
I'm going to take a break. Back here in a while.
Yeah, we'll have. This will be another hour. Just Kim and I talking EverQuest
about EverQuest.
Yeah. So that's we shouldn't go there, but that's good to know. That definitely had I was working at LucasArts at the time, so it torpedoed my life in a different way. But but I got it. Okay, cool. Awesome. So yeah, so it's nice. I'm glad your parents allowed you or gave you that
They
nudge
were
toward DigiPen.
they were very supportive of me
That's great.
going to video game school for some reason.
That's great. Awesome. Okay. Well, so if you don't mind, like again, and you've talked about this in various places, but kind of like because we're going to lead up to Portal, while you're at DigiPen, what are some of the relevant beats, I guess, that got you to Narbacular Drop and that team? That kind of led to that. I don't think that was early, right? It was more later in your DigiPen time.
I mean, I worked with pretty much the same core group of guys that we all went on to make Portal together, pretty
Cool.
much from like day one. So every year, DigiPen has a projects class where over the course of 2 semesters, you're building a video game. At the time, you weren't allowed to use any external engines. It was you had to build one from scratch.
Whoa.
Which is why sometimes those games are real janky. um, so basically, we started working together, and like we had a few folks that like came in and out of the team, but pretty much from day one, I was working with Jeep and Garrett and then Dave, and then we had, again, as I mentioned, a few people that would like come in and out over the years, but I had been working with those guys from day one. Each year we would sort of iterate on top of the game we made before engine wise. And then we decided our senior year that we wanted something really interesting because we recognized that this would be a showcase piece for our resumes and our portfolios trying to get into the industry post graduation. And so we were like, all right, we need to do something kind of weird and cool, and like let's do something different. And that's kind of the genesis of how we thought of Narbacular Drop.
Can I ask what you were building on top of that Narbacular Drop seemed to make the most sense to leap to sort of next? And maybe I guess we could maybe also talk a little bit about what in Narbacular Drop kind of becomes Portal. But let's start with like how did you get to Narbacular Drop from what you had? Like why that?
Yeah. So one of the teammates, Dave Kircher, had the initial like graphical idea of like being able to see in one portal and out the other. Mm-hmm. And we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do with it. So each year, basically the summer before we would go into the next year, each of us would make a game pitch to one another of like, hey, this is what I want to build next year. What do you guys think? And we would all sort of talk through what we wanted to build. And so I had done a proposal of like almost like a Lost Vikings-esque sort of puzzle game. Mm-hmm. And then I'm trying to remember what Jeep proposed, but it was also sort of in this kind of puzzly game space. And then Dave had this idea of these portals, and we were like, okay, well, let's kind of slam all of our ideas together. And what if we utilize these as a means to solve puzzles? And that's kind of how we came up with the idea. I'm trying to remember where the storyline came from. It might have been Jeep. And then at the time too as well, so this would have been late 2004, I guess. We were allowed to, for our senior project, to work with the art teams that were in the Art Associates program. So that's how we got 3 artists to come and help work on the game too as well. So they helped out with our characters in the game. I helped out with some of the environment textures and props and things like that. So we all kind of worked together as a team that senior year.
Wow. It's really cool to hear that you were working with that group during your time there, and that you were able to iterate over each year. We talk a lot about iteration on the podcast, and obviously we all use it in our day to day. And to your point on kind of like building upon past years, there's a lot of teams that don't get that a privilege, to keep iterating together over and over again, and to be able to do that during your education phase. That's really special. That was good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's to me, one of the real benefits of the DigiPen program. I think, we're all nerds, right? And sometimes we don't play nice with others. And what's great about the DigiPen program and the fact that they have these projects classes is like you learn to work with others. And what's nice being able to stick with a team over the course of 4 years is you learn what everybody's about, right? And you learn what everybody's good at. And you learn how to cooperate and like share and collaborate. And that was something that I considered super duper valuable, like going into the game industry with those skills.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's yeah, I can imagine it being pretty daunting. Obviously, we all go through the hiring process these days for people coming out of school, and if you were in a program that was maybe not as sort of project focused and team focused, there's I've experienced even just on being on the other side of that. I think people who you can tell maybe need to take that step, and to have it happen in school is super valuable. So I hope
it's
more.
definitely, it's a safe place to mess up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're paying for the privilege to be there as opposed to someone's paying you. So you better
Right.
get it together fast, right?
Yeah, good point. Good point. Yep. Cool. So the genesis of Narbacular Drop, interesting. So puzzles being at the cornerstone, and then this sort of weird portal idea. And so where should we go next? Do we go directly to talking to Valve? I don't remember how that all went down. Or is there more to talk about with Narbacular before we get to that?
I mean, the segue into Valve is Narbacular Drop, so it makes sense. So basically, we work on this game 2 semesters. Every year, DigiPen has like a local trade fair, basically, where they have like the senior showcase, where they have folks show the games that they worked on, submit resumes. They also would like do interviews and things like that too, as well, for prospective hires coming out of school. So at the time, we were showing our game. We had Robin Walker from Valve of TF2 fame come take a look at our game during the student showcase. He did not like the art. I was like, cool, bro. Basically he was like, hey, look, this is really interesting though. You should come to Valve and show this to more people, and gave me his card. And I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
And I talked to the team afterwards. So I think like Jeep and Dave already had a job lined up and ready to go. And I think they were already kind of working there already as part-time. And then Garrett and I were still trying to find our jobs. I think I had just come back from like interviewing at like Crystal Dynamics. Yeah, obviously did not get that. And then I asked the team, I was like, hey, everybody, we got this offer to come into Valve and show the game. What do you guys think? And they agreed that we should go and pursue it. So I said, okie dokie. So I emailed Robin back, found a time for everybody to go over that worked for folks. And then the whole team came with, and we went there. We were brought into a room with a computer setup. and like a TV to project the game onto. There's a couch, there's some chairs and stuff. And, we were told, okay, wait here, get the game set up. So Jeep got the game installed. He was going to be the demoer, and then I was going to talk through what was happening. And Robin came back with like 20 folks.
Oh,
and
my.
we were like, oh, okay.
Oh, my. What is going through your head? Oh, my goodness.
Panic. Because God, how old was I? I think I had I don't think I was even 21 yet. I was pretty young.
Wow.
So I was like, I don't know what's happening. So he brought in like 20 people, and we're like, all right, I guess we're going to demo this game. So we start talking through it. And then at one point, Gabe walks in the room. And then we proceeded to show the demo. And at the end of it, Gabe asked us, hey, what are you guys doing after you graduate? And I said, well, hopefully finding jobs. That would be fantastic, so we can pay back our student loans. And he said, all right, stay there, and we'll have someone come get you. We're like, all right. So he leaves. I think Robin goes with him. And we just continue to hang out. There were some folks that wanted to play, so we, restarted the game so folks could try it out. And we're just sort of talking to folks, and maybe 20 or 30 minutes passes. And then someone comes back to get us, and we go, okie doke, and go down the hallway. And then we get brought into this conference room with this giant metal table, because the Valve offices are kind of industrial themed. And we sit down, and there's Gabe and Robin, and Gabe asks us, would you yeah, sorry.
I don't believe this. I just don't believe this is insane.
Yeah. I mean, I thought we were being punked. So Gabe asks us, hey, do you want to make this here at Valve? Do you want to remake this game here at Valve? And I think we all were like, what?
Yeah, I would too.
Yes. Is this a trap? Is this a trick question? And so we were like, yeah, that sounds great. And he was like, okay, we'll hire you on as contractors initially, just to see how you folks do here at Valve. And if things are going well, then we'll hire you full time, and we'll see what we can do with this. We all got up. I at least was shaking because I was like, what is going on? And then
I'm shaking right now.
And then we were escorted out of the building. And then we basically stood outside the building, just kind of staring at each other for a good 5 minutes, where we just sort of were staring, and we were had nothing to say because we were in shock. And then we were like, holy shit. Oh my God. So I got back in touch with them and worked out when we were going to get started. And at one point, they initially, because I guess have a problem, they initially offered us a certain amount of money per hour to be contractors. And I said, I think we needed more. And so I, at one point, went into the offices and negotiated with their CFO of how much we were going to make.
Nice. Yes.
Because I don't know what's wrong with me. And then we got started. I want to say July, I think is when we started. So July 2005.
Oh my gosh.
And part of part of the, I guess, negotiations too as well is so DigiPen actually owns any of the IP that is created during your time at DigiPen. So I had to figure out what was okay and what wasn't, and basically like talked to Claude Comer, who's the owner of DigiPen, and a couple other folks about what we could do. And it was essentially, as long as we didn't take any code or art, if all we were doing is carrying over essentially this concept of portals, then it would be fine. And so we were going to ditch the code base anyways. Like, we're obviously going to make this in Source Engine or at Valve. So that wasn't a big deal.
And Robin didn't like the art.
Robin didn't like the art. So it was like, all right, well, we're obviously redoing the art and figuring something else out. So, okay, cool. Let's do it.
Wow. Holy cow. Now, I mean, I think we've always heard the rumors and the sort of, the legend of it, but hearing it from you is such a treat. Thank you for sharing that. Especially the moment to moment. So who was in on your team? Who was there? Was it this all of you from the program?
I think it was all of us except one person. So it was like me, Jeep, Dave, Realm. Yeah, I think Scott wasn't there. Yeah, it was pretty much all of us except for one.
And this was mainly the group you'd been with throughout your DigiPen time. That's just so incredible. Yeah. It's so interesting too that from DigiPen's perspective, and this is obviously, as we all very well know, design ideas in the game space are not easily controlled, like code or art or something, right? That's much more specific, and that DigiPen had a line in the sand there. But when it came to arguably the most important element of the concept, that was not something that was easily, ownable. So it's, as a designer, it's always on my mind about, where that stuff goes.
Yeah. I mean, it ultimately, from an IP law perspective, it ultimately boiled down to like, hey, look, portals as a concept have existed in media for, decades. So what's really, what is the copyrightable thing is,
totally.
It's hard to kind of put your finger on. So so we were allowed to basically take that mechanic, and that was fine. As long as we redid the code and the art and the IP wrapper, which, again, we were going to do it anyways. So it was like, oh, okay, well, that's easy.
Wow. What a story.
It's worth noting, though, that it wasn't kind of the end of Narbacular Drops, because it had some accolades as well. It won what I think was only maybe the third or possibly the fourth student showcase at the IGF, if that's correct. Yeah. And you went to Slam Dance. So you were at Valve, developing the successor, and then going and showing off your, all the stuff you weren't allowed to take.
It was a little awkward. I'm not going to lie. It was weird.
Was that was going to things like the IGF kind of pretty common for? I mean, I imagine it was pretty common, but were you encouraged to do that by DigiPen?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think I was already planning on going to GDC anyway, so it was like, oh, okay, well, I'm already there. I may as well just hang out for a bit and show the game. What was really kind of interesting at the time too, as well, is someone from Human Head had swung by the booth and was like, oh, hey, this portal idea is really, really interesting. Oh
boy,
we're working on this game Prey. And this is really fascinating. Do you want to maybe like come to Human Head? And then I was like, oh yeah, we're already at Valve though. They were like, okay, and walked away. I kind of remember that too, and thinking that was pretty funny.
Interesting. And then thus Prey, that version of Prey ended up.
Yeah, I think they already had, from what I can glean, they already had this concept of portals, but it wasn't. They were more like doors, right? That they were in a fixed point in space as opposed to something that was dynamic.
Right. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Again, goes back to that sort of that core concept and mechanic and how that is just an idea. Yeah. Interesting. Wow. It's, the concept of everyone coming into that room, and it's just such an interesting and, I guess, if you don't mind me saying, weird approach to identifying, something cool and then acting on that. And of course, Valve is that's been their thing for a while. Half-Life is the only thing they've really done that has,
everything else is an acquisition.
Yeah, exactly. They see something with potential and then they go for it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting to hear that, I mean, obviously we've all been at bigger corporations where the process for coming up with new ideas ranges from completely wacky to dysfunctional to whatever strategy kind of stuff. And something that sounds more like going with your gut and going with what's on screen and what you see, I guess proves that they have a bit of a knack for it, I guess, because they've had a pretty good track record of that. So you're at Valve.
Yep.
Oh, I wanted to ask, before you went to that meeting, just to give some context for the audience, DigiPen's in the Seattle area, greater Seattle area, so you would have known about Valve. Like, was going to Valve, demoing for Valve a big deal for the team? Like, did everyone
absolutely.
freak out?
I mean, yeah. Who didn't know Half-Life, right?
Yeah, fair. I just want to make sure, put it in context. Okay, so you're there. You mentioned earlier, or maybe this was in pre-show, you mentioned maybe you should talk about sort of there's the contractor part of it, and that, maybe you weren't full-time right away, but also you weren't sure what, if you were going to make a shipping game or not. Can you talk about that and how?
So Portal was interesting because its timeline shifted multiple times. I would say it shifted 3 times. So when we first started, we were told, okay, you have 6 months to make a tech demo and you're going to put it on Steam. And we were like, oh, okay. And one of the reasons why Portal is in the Half-Life universe is because we're like, oh, we only have 6 months. So it's not like we can make a ton of stuff. So we need to borrow the art direction from something already in existence. And, Portals felt very sci-fi. Hey, there's this sci-fi franchise in-house that's pretty cool. Yeah. All right, cool. Let's go with that. And I talked to folks that did a lot of the art direction, on Half-Life 2, and got a ton of help from this guy, Randy Lundeen, who's like probably one of the nicest people on the planet. So he helped me and the art team kind of figure out what would be a good aesthetic that fit within the Half-Life universe, but we could kind of call our own and have some key highlights for our art direction that set us apart. So we were like, okay, well, we're in the Half-Life universe. It's very sci-fi. Let's come up with the backstory of like what's going on. But we didn't go too deep into the narrative because, again, tech demo, 6 months. So mostly it was about making sure the code worked, getting, Dave, Jeep, and Garrett to make all the code work inside the source engine. At that time, I switched over to design from programming because it turns out I don't really like doing it. So I was like, I would like to do literally anything else. So I ended up becoming our one and only full-time designer. And yeah, just we had 6 months. And then at the end of that, like towards the end of that 6 months, we were like, had a little package. It was same concept, these little puzzles in a room, go from point A to point B, and figure out how to use these mechanics with the portal. It was maybe, I want to say like 15 to 30 minutes worth of gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was it. And Gabe and a bunch of the leadership at Valve, contrary to popular belief, there is leadership at Valve, took a look at what we had, and they were like, you know what? This is actually really cool. And I think they put that 6-month time limit because we were a bunch of kids out of school, right?
Sure.
So they were like, okay, let's see if these jokers can make anything. And like we did, right? So they were like, oh, all right, cool. Good job, kids. Keep going. So we were given another 6 months. And then at that point, we were like, okay, well, we're noticing this pattern of people kind of losing motivation to keep going. So we probably need a story. And so that's when we looped in Woolpaw. So like Chet and Eric had just joined Valve a few months before and were looking for something to do. And so I ended up talking to Eric, and he said he wanted to come and join as a writer. So he did.
Wow.
So far it's constraints and luck is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. It's like really tight constraints. Again, it was just us out of school and Woolpaw.
How was it feeling? Like what? I'm just trying to think about, because I started my career a little later. I went to grad school. That didn't work out, but it took a while to not work out. So it's like, I was a little older and like a little less, I don't know, fearful or whatever, a little more confident. Were you all terrified to go to work every day? I mean, I feel like I would have been at 22 or whatever,
we were pretty isolated for the most part. We had our little corner on the floor with QA. And, if we wanted to see anybody else from the game teams, we'd have to like climb a flight of stairs.
Oh, so that wasn't happening.
So, yeah. Oh, that's too much. Oh, no. And like we had some advisors and folks that would help us out. So like Robin was like our intermittent supervisor. Again, I worked with Randy quite a bit. And there was another guy, John Guthrie, who was a level designer on Half-Life 2, who helped me out immensely. Oh my gosh, he was amazing in terms of teaching me how to use the tools in Source Engine and how to utilize the physics engine. And so we had folks that were absolutely helping us, but for the most part, we were left alone. And so we were just like having fun. Like if I remember any sort of general feeling from us, it was actually just fun. Again, we'd worked together for years. We knew each other. So it was like, all right, cool. And every day we could see pretty directly that we were making progress on one thing or another. And so we felt encouraged. We were getting really good feedback from folks off team that what we were doing is really special. And so we were like, all right, cool. Let's just put our heads down, keep going. So like, yes, I was terrified, but for the most part, I think all of us were focused on the work. And we're really passionate and wanted to make the most out of the opportunity that was given to us.
Yeah, that's so cool. I also it's interesting to hear their strategy about whether they had intended you to ship the 6-month tech demo or not, or maybe it was just a maneuver to see how, like you said, to see how you all did. They do put stuff on Steam, and they all have always put smaller stuff on Steam kind of as experiments. And I guess to your point, like, it's not that what do they have to lose, but they saw potential and they placed a bet. It was a bet on you to see what would happen. And in the grand scheme of things, if nothing came of it, probably not a big deal for them. So
Yeah,
they're like,
absolutely.
yeah. So I mean, it's interesting because they have the ability to do these sorts of things. Then it's great that they do act on them, right, and bring people in. Yeah, so that's fascinating. So then you get the extra 6 months, but that
Yep.
wasn't the end.
Nope, that wasn't
of
the end.
Story.
So at that point, again, we were doing pretty well. We had a good chunk of what we ended up shipping at that year mark.
Oh,
but
okay.
but at that point, it was decided that Half-Life 2 Episode 2 was going to be put into the same SKU as Team Fortress 2, because they were both working on them at the same time. Both of them had delays, and I think they were just like, F it, we're just gonna ship them together, and you know what, let's take this weird Portal game and throw that in there too. Why not? And so at that year mark, it was decided, we were gonna ship in what would become the orange box. So we had another year at that point. So we were like, okay, well, what do we want to do? So at that point, like all of the behind the scenes stuff didn't exist. And so it was just, Gladys talking to you, you finished the test. I don't remember how we ended it at that time. But once we realized we had another year, we were like, okay, we can make another, like, essentially like biome kit for what we wanted to do, and we should make it so you escape. And so what would be fun is feeling like you're behind the machine. And so that's when all of the behind the scenes stuff came in. It's when we decided we actually had time to make Gladys at the end. Spoilers. And we didn't have the time before that, because we basically had 2 artists making props. And we didn't have time to make a character other than Chell. And so we were like, well, I guess Gladys is not a possibility, because we should make her this pretty cool robot, right? So yeah, like we had our timeline shifted out, doubled essentially. And so we were like, okay, it's time to like really iterate on what we have, figure out how many more additional levels, and then figure out this behind the scenes sequence, and how do we go back through the levels and tease out its existence and kind of retrofit it back in.
Interesting. Yeah.
Wow, to have the basic scope of the game at that point, and then be given a year.
Yeah.
To, like you said, double.
Just noodle around. We're like, all right.
Is like, that's also
just
amazing. Like, that also never happens. And I hopefully we have time to get to it, but I want to ask kind of about the scope of the game, because in my opinion, we talked about this on the Portal series that we already did, but in my opinion, the size and the scope and the length of the game is actually pretty critical to me as a player for its success, because I think it's just the perfect length. But it's just so cool to hear that you had that iteration time then to really make it more polished and more, have that sort of, I guess, world building depth, or whatever you want to say, to that extra stuff. So Eric came in at that 6 month mark, second 6 month mark. So he had been on for 6 months. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So he had already been on it, and we had already started writing. And we had a really kind of fun writing process. So both of us were early morning risers, which is non-standard in the game industry, as you might know. But we would both get in like really early in the morning at like, I don't know, like 7:30 a.m. And I tried to crank out basically the bones of like one level a day and continue to iterate on it over the course of a week. So, trying to average. We've got one level that we were feeling pretty good about in the can per week. And then I would show Eric what I built the day before, and then we would sit down and I'd have him play. And then we would talk about, where do we see this in the progression for the player of like their skill level and how we think they're feeling at the time. And he would go and write something and like within a day or so get back to me with the stub-in text-to-speech audio. And that's how we ended up with that sort of robot voice, because it just started off as text-to-speech. And then after a while, we're like, we kind of like this.
Oh, man. Come on.
Let's figure out how to keep this in a weird way.
Perfect.
Yeah. So we got our voice actress to talk more like a robot, and then we like the post-processing on top of it.
Can you sound more like text-to-speech, please?
Yeah, we would like you to sound worse. Thank you.
Thank you for training your instrument for all these years. Like it's a piano, you finally some, Steinway grand, and we're just going to drop some tools on top of the strings. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought up the level design process for yourself, so it sounds like, which I guess in retrospect, it makes sense to me now that you're saying it, that the levels were not obviously designed in order. You were kind of designing what seemed interesting and then finding the right places for them. Is that what you mean?
Yes and no. Like some chunks of it were designed in order. Some weren't. Basically, like each one was made in its own like level map, and then we stitched it together with the elevators. But it was mostly like we had a gameplay progression that we were trying to map to, which was to introduce a mechanic utilizing the portals, and then we would have a reinforcement level right after that. And then we would have a logic leap where you would have to try and figure out, we gave you 2/3 of like what to do here. Can you put the extra piece together? And so we would do these levels basically as triples. And we sort of had a rough idea of what order like these were all going in, and obviously we would go back and maybe insert this chunk here, or a lot of it was in response to playtesting too as well. So like if players were just not grokking something, or if they did something that we didn't anticipate them doing, we were like, okay, well that's a new level.
Nice.
So like we're gonna stop you from doing it this time by figuring it out. Like, oh, we're gonna put a little glass shield here so you can't do that. But in a couple levels, we'll take that glass shield away. So can you figure out how to do what you just did again?
Nice. Yes.
That really reminds me of adventure game writing methodology, right? Because you mentioned them earlier. It makes me think of how they would watch people play the game. And then when people tried to do something repeatedly that they could then see the logic of, they would write a line for it. So you're doing sort of the same thing with mechanical stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, they're trying to do this. Well, we're not going to let them do that here, but they've
maybe in a couple levels,
but maybe later we can add that complexity. That's cool.
Yeah, because we wanted to teach you this skill as a tool in your toolkit, and if you never learned it, and we make you use it again in a more complicated sequence, and you've never essentially been taught that because you cheated,
right?
Or done the thing that we didn't want you to do, then crap, it's gonna not be in the player's favor later on. And so we would go back in, make them learn the thing that we wanted them to learn, and then move on. I mean, like Portal, in essence, 2/3, 3/4 of it is like a tutorial, and then the back half of it is like, oh yeah, go wild. You've learned all these skills. Like, you figure out how you want to get through this. And we make it a little less prescriptive of how you solve the problem.
I mean, yeah, obviously a gross generalization, but I think a lot of games, if a lot of my favorite games and a lot of games we've played on the podcast, because we try to focus on the kind of classic and, you know, quote unquote genre defining games if we can. I think a lot of them do take that approach where there's a lot of learning about what the game is for a big chunk of the game. So the payoff does end up being the last third or quarter of the game. And I on the series, I'm definitely trying to boost it up a little bit, but I don't mean to, to be such a fanboy right now. But I do think that Portal, from a knowledge progression perspective for the player, is, should be taught in schools, as far as like, no, and I mean it. No, I mean it. And as a designer, as a level designer, knowing how hard that is to do well in the context of a full game. That's why I think the length is key for me. And we did a bonus episode for Portal 2, and I love Portal 2 as well, but it's a much longer game, and I think that it does put a strain on some things that Portal 1 didn't have for me. And I just think, as far as like, students should learn how to progress players through the knowledge base of games, through systems and mechanics. And I just think it's the perfect game for that. So I'm nerding out here, but but it's really cool to hear the iterative, because I know that iteration was going to be at the core of that process.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it sounds like it was.
Yeah, we pretty much play tested that sucker at least once a week. So we would have some play tests where it's like, oh yeah, we want to have you play through everything we have so far. We would have people that had played before come in and maybe just play 1 or 2 levels that were net new to them, just to see what they would do. We had, again, it was just very, very playtest driven. For me as a level designer, again, my cadence was whip up a concept like Monday, Tuesday-ish, and then playtest it, talk with Eric, figure out how we wanted to fit in dialogue of, what's the split of teasing out story versus things that are a little bit more mechanical or hints for the player. Get that in the game, have it roughly lighted and, way I wanted to, and then Friday would be playtest it.
Yeah.
And then rinse and repeat. And, alternate weeks of like, I make something one week, next week is all about, iterating on maybe the last 3 levels to get them the way I want them to be. And
that's a great cadence. We're constantly learning, constantly getting the feedback, but also constantly inventing and taking the ideas that you pull out of that to reapply them. And it's a really,
that's
good way to work.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so awesome. Okay, so to transition a little bit in our little bit of remaining time, because we could go on and on. So you get a year orange box. Orange box is a thing which we talked a fair amount. So don't worry about going into detail on that. I think the audience knows what it is, because we do have some youngsters that may not. It's like you said earlier, I forget how you put it, but it's like this weird Portal game is thrown into the package.
Yeah. We were the bonus. We're bonus add-in.
Yeah, your bonus. I think even on the cover, we noted on the cover of Orange Box, it says something like introducing Portal or something.
Yeah.
How does that go? Like, there's also the response, of course, but it is such a surprise, because we were both working as developers at the time when it came out, and I remember it being a surprise. Because obviously looking forward to episode 2, looking forward to Team Fortress. And then what's this? Being really kind of stealing in my opinion, the limelight in a way. What was that all like?
We all thought that like 5 people would play it.
I was wondering if there was like any I don't know, like resignation of like, we didn't get to be our own release.
No, I mean, we were just happy we got to make a game. Yeah. We were like, oh my God, we were so grateful to
that's cool.
Ship.
Yeah.
and not die on the vine. So yeah, at no point, at least for me anyways, it never crossed my mind of like, oh gosh, I wish I wasn't in the orange box. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm glad I shipped something. Holy crap. Like first game I ever made straight out of school, I actually get to ship it at Valve.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not gonna crap on that. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, good point. A lot of games don't ship, and people don't realize
most
that.
games don't ship. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I honestly wonder what the statistic is. I imagine it's like 15% of games actually make it through the door.
Yeah. That'd be a good statistic.
I really want to know
Game
that.
History Foundation to work on that.
I would say it's probably getting lower all the time, but that's just me.
Shipping games is hard, as it turns out.
Yes, it turns
out. Who knew, right?
Yeah.
So we all figured, like, I don't know, maybe like 5 people would play it and think, oh well, this is cute, and we'd move on to the next thing, but people turned out really liked it, and we were all really shocked.
And what was the feel? There's your perspective. Do you remember the perspective inside of Valve? Sort of like, because obviously I assume the team had played it.
So I mean,
their expectations, or people were just going to see what happens.
I think from a team perspective, we were all just, again, really grateful that we got to make this thing, and it was our baby. We got to kind of just do whatever the heck we wanted. And we made this thing that we were really proud of, and we loved it. And we kind of were resigned of like, oh, if only 5 people play it, that's cool. We did the thing. And then I think in Valve, everyone was just so busy, right? Working on shipping 3 titles all at once, right? Like we would do. And at the time, Valve had a really small QA department. And so what the entire studio did was QA cycles. So for the last couple weeks, how long was it? It was 2 to 4 weeks before it shipped. Everybody had playtest cycles. So there was somebody in the building playtesting all the games all the time. So Eric and I were always in the building together early in the morning. So I would take the early morning shift of oh yeah, come in at 5, 6 o'clock, stay till 3, go home. And then, someone would roll on to continue to play test. So I think everybody was just so busy and focused on, again, we weren't shipping 1 title. We weren't shipping 2 titles. We were shipping 3 titles.
Yeah.
All at the same time. And so I think everybody was just focused on their own stuff and making sure that it played well and it went out the door to the best quality that we as a whole studio could manage.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of those games is multiplayer as well, so there's a lot going on. Yeah,
yep.
For sure.
Lots of sessions of TF2.
For play testing, yeah. Chet talked a little bit about that too for his time there, about sort of how everyone pitches in, which is a great culture. Yeah, to have in a studio where everyone knows that playtesting is important to get the games out. Well, it's a great point that everyone's busy, and I can only imagine that there's an element of surprise for everybody too, right? For each other's games, not just for Portal, but surprises maybe that you had for episode 2 or Team Fortress or whatever. And so the responses, to it, and I just it's I don't know, poetic or something, that the fact that it is such a gem inside of this package that was a surprise, at least I'll just speak for myself as a player and a developer at the time, because it wasn't kind of out of left field, if you will, and that sort of made it even cooler. I think the other 2, I kind of knew what they were going to be and had played previous versions of and was excited about them, but this one I had no context for. So I'm sure that was that's part of the charm of it, if its beauty as well. But anyway, so Yeah, where do we go from here?
I don't know. We have 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, I guess.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, the story.
we should at least give you a chance to talk about the things you're doing now. I mean, it's we wanted to, of course, focus on Portal, but even when we have successful games earlier in our careers, we still do the work. I'm curious to hear about what you've done and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, I left Valve in 2009, and just kind of been doing a little bit of everything. I think for me, as a human being, I love to learn. And so I've spent most of my career doing all sorts of different roles at different studios and places, just wanting to learn different aspects of the game industry. So I most recently was in publishing, like for the last, I guess, like 7 years between Stadia and Xbox. And I left Xbox about a year ago now, I guess, and decided to take some time off and figure out what I wanted to do next. And decided that I kind of wanted to go back to my roots and go back to development at a studio. And so in the meantime was just doing some consultancy work, which is kind of fun because I get to do a little bit of everything. So actually one of my clients, I'm doing brand management for them, which is actually really fun. I'm like, oh, I get to make fun little videos.
Nice.
And so ended up talking to Heather Serlin at Near Studios, which is an indie studio. They're making a game called Hawthorne. And they were looking for a COO to help them grow and helping out with publishing deals and things like that. So I've been with that project for about a month now, and it's been fun. Definitely still in the drinking from the fire hose phase.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, there's so many things to learn and ingest.
And taking on yet another new kind of operations and kind of growing a studio. That's a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
so that's awesome.
I've sort of done bits and pieces of that before.
Right.
But yeah, not in this particular context.
Yeah, awesome. Well, congrats on that.
Thanks.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for
thanks for coming on.
Yeah, this is fun.
Brain.
Yeah, it was great to hear the backstory of all that stuff, from people living it. It was great to have Eric come on too, and he spoke very highly of you. It sounds like from both sides you had a great little team there, the two of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole project, like honestly, everybody was wonderful. We all had tons of fun. And I think, one of the things that makes the game resonate with so many people is it's just filled with inside jokes from our team. Like all of the silly things that people latched onto that got turned into memes were just us joking around and having a good time as a team. And so I think that's what you can really tell when you play the game, that the team that built it had a great time.
Well said.
That is well said. Every piece of art is a reflection of its own making. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. This has been great.
Yeah, good times.
Welcome back from the break. It was really great to get Kim Swift on for this. This is Portal's, had that kind of impact. I'm glad we've been able to get a few interviews around it. It's been great.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm proud that I do feel like we got a pretty well-rounded, view of things. And I'm glad that we got Kim in kind of at the end too, because we get the full journey from her,
Right.
speaking for the DigiPen team and kind of that. And I think we talked about it on the series. We talked about it probably with Eric too, because Eric came in, kind of in a very different way. But I at least had always heard, stories, legends, myths, whatever, about sort of how all that went down. But I never thought I would get it from the horse's mouth, kind of directly. And to have Kim kind of walk us through that, one of the most insane stories of game development, pitching, and result that I've ever heard. And
yeah, I mean, it really is. And I think it's probably something that, DigiPen has been dining out on for, whatever it is, 20 years,
Yeah.
like that you could not have a better advertisement for your product than, our students went on as new graduates to make one of the best games of all time. Of course, supported by a good environment to do it in. I mean, it sounds like it was really pretty ideal to work there as well. The terror of showing off your game and having 20 people come watch it, including Gabe, notwithstanding. So, it sounds like, a pretty ideal initial experience with the industry as far as that goes.
And Kim's point about just and just what we said there at the very end, just sort of the reflection that the game has on the experience that they had developing it. I guess we talk about it a fair amount, but I feel like we don't talk about it enough, that the process of making games, as all three of us said during this interview, is already hard enough. And I think we've all been in, as many listeners have been in, environments where making games is harder than it needs to be, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Tim, I could tell you some stories.
And yeah, fair enough. Some of my own making maybe is what you're alluding to. But yeah, and to hear, I think she totally nailed it there at the end, that when you play the game, you feel it. You feel that joy and that fun that they were having, and the sort of lack of restrictions, but also giving themselves their own constraints. It's also just a lot of great development lessons. Like I think Eric mentioned it as well, but the concept that I always have this highfalutin, somebody had a master plan to a grand plan to make it a Half-Life game, but turns out no, it was a constraint of art. Yep. We have for using source. That is the perfect example of a constraint within our medium that is almost always necessary, but we don't embrace. We always like, no, it can't be. We can't have limitations. We got to go, shoot for the moon. We got to do a whole new thing. It's like, no, sometimes you don't.
Well, and in fact, I mean, that constraint was beneficial to both.
Yeah, right.
The Portal, but also to the broader Half-Life universe, right? I mean, it's so broadened out, what we think of, I think to, of course,
bigger.
Yeah, it made it like a bigger, even more real space, right? I mean, it really, it feels very Half-Life to play Portal 2 in particular. Not that Portal itself doesn't, but like to be able to then grow it out to like this even more epic scale later with the sequel, it just is it's just a huge space, right? I mean, I don't know how to think about it other than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, they clearly have not had a macro plan for the Half-Life world, and I'm not. That's not necessarily a criticism. It's just sort of like how we know how they work. There's not like a franchise director who is trying to orchestrate all this stuff. So they need opportunities like this to flesh that. Like I believe, because we played Half-Life 1 and a little bit of Half-Life 2 on the podcast, Aperture Science is just a footnote mention here and there, right? Like they don't really go into it that much. And this game mentions Black Mesa, I think, at least once, or maybe Portal 2 does.
It's in the song in the first one, but I don't think it's otherwise mentioned in the first one.
This one focused in one element of the world building and then referencing the other and vice versa. So it's just it's subtle, but to your point, you need those opportunities to flesh something out, especially with their process. And yeah, I think it's a great point that they amplify each other. But the fact that it came from the constraint that it did is such a,
Yeah.
I think, a really, really important lesson for all of us.
Yeah, because I think just judging from what I've seen of it, Narbacular is a little more fantasy like.
It is, yeah, yep.
So it's more like
very,
Magic.
very different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's also, I think, third person. So it's a little more.
Yeah, and the environment,
action adventure,
stonework and dungeony, and
yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's just it's great what comes with constraints. But yeah, I mean, I would say that it is, on the negative side, I think often when, people say, well, why is this game lousy? Or why are these bugs here or whatever? And like, this is no fun. And often, well, the team by that point wasn't having any fun either.
Yeah.
And usually those pressures don't come from the team,
Right.
Those pressures come from, I mean, sometimes they can be because of interpersonal conflict, but more often than not, they are external conditions, let's just say, that kind of lead to something, just not being any fun to work on. And when that joy goes out, the games often lose any fun they might have as well. I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't really good games that also don't have their costs, because we're all aware that, crunch culture in particular in the industry has always been a problem. Hopefully better now than it used to be, but probably I know there are still places where it's still an issue, but I mean, I just it is the team makes the game, and what the team is feeling gets into the game too, I think. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good example.
Happy to put a bow on Portal. It's been a delight. We've had a lot of interviews in the last couple of months, which has been terrific. Means I don't have to play games so much. Geez. One term of art she used, which I'm sure we've used in the past, but I know people have occasionally sent in mail and said, "Hey, you should explain when you say things." She said SKU. And I wanted to let people know what that was if you're listening this far. SKU stands for SKU, stock keeping unit. It's an inventory term that was borrowed for software. And it just means, for us, a product, right? So a individual product might have multiple SKUs because it has multiple variations on how it goes out. So you might have the special edition and the enhanced edition and the super enhanced edition and then the basic edition. That's 4 different SKUs, even though it's sort of one product. It's considered 4 separate SKUs. So when she says SKU, that's what that means. That's what we mean by it. But it's an old term of business art for physical product. And I just wanted to clear that up in case anybody ever heard it and was like, what is that? So
I think also like each platform is its own SKU technically.
That's correct. Right? Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if somebody says, how many SKUs are you shipping? They mean, are you shipping on PlayStation, Xbox, PC, Switch?
I mean, it really means every store element, right? Yeah, so it's like I said, multiple editions, or if it's packaged with something else. The box product is sometimes different from the digital product in terms of what it actually is. Because the digital product might have a slightly later date, so it's actually a separate in terms of when it has to be in. I mean, it's a whole accounting and all that jazz. But yeah, and often different languages or different SKUs as well, depending. It's less the case now with more digital downloads, but it used to be the case that separate languages were often separate SKUs. So here in North America, it'd be one SKU, and then you'd have maybe one total for Europe that had multiple languages on disk, and then depending on what era, and then any Asian countries would often be separate SKUs. So it's like a whole separate thing. But that's what that means. In case we've said it before and never explained it, I'm trying to be mindful of stuff like that. All right. Well, you can shoot us reviews. We actually have one. We'll read it next time we're doing, what were we playing? Pikmin. When we get back to Pikmin, we'll read. We did get a kind review that came in through email this week. We love to see those. I see the Apple ones, but if you're doing it somewhere else or just want to send one in, because all you get to do is thumbs up or star a podcast, we love to get those too. And you can send those via email to devgameclub@gmail.com. We're on the web at devgameclub.com, and my co-host here, Twitch, is at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
You've finished the Outer Wilds and you're charging on to I'm hearing no.
Calamity thinks I have one session left.
Oh wow.
He seems to think I'm that close.
Okay.
I would love to think that too, but and I kind of see what he means, I think, but I in my head right now I don't have the clear path. So we'll see. Well, maybe one more session. And I think I actually have an alternate plan for the Unbeaten series to move on to after that. That's easier than the previous one I chose. So
okay, cool. All right, Final Fantasy IX, got it. There's a link. We've mentioned Discord occasionally. There's a link to that in our show notes. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, the merch store, Discord, all by Mark Garcia. Have fun flooding the Enrichment Center with a deadly neurotoxin this week, and good night.
Good night.